All right, so we can just do this while you're walking away there?
I'll be quiet.
You don't have to be quiet. As long as you answer the questions. Is this your first time here?
Yes.
Really? Seems kind of strange because, back with the first album, you were so big.
Yeah, everywhere but here.
Mm-hmm.
I think it sold like 2.
One of the few places in the world, though, huh? Didn't do that well.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Even in South America, Mexico, it did pretty well. I mean,
Really?
It wasn't like England or Germany or
Right.
the America or those places, but the Southeast Asia in general, that sort of didn't
take off like it did elsewhere. Is that something the record kind of a crass question, but is that something the record company?
I think so. I would say I'm pretty much right on the button on that one.
They say like it does well in Denmark, it does well in English-speaking countries. Why not Asia? Why not?
I just think they didn't really try. I think really what happened was that at that point in time, they leaned so heavy on California market as opposed to the whole American market, and the California market was very slow in picking up Out of the Hell, and even still today, Bat Out of Hell has never had the impact on the west coast of America that it has had around the rest of the world. And I think that the Southeast, in this area, the impact was from California more than it was from the West Coast more than anything else. It's like, as for some reason the West Coast never really wanted to. Well, they kept calling me. They didn't play Springsteen either for a very long. Not until Hungry Heart, until '81. Born to Run, they wouldn't play him, and it's just that he put out more records than I did, quicker, and so they kept calling anybody. And Billy went through the same thing, Billy Joel, and they just kept calling us East Coast artists. And they said, well, the West Coast doesn't relate to the East Coast. I mean, it was this whole kind of very strange political kind of thing. And then I think the record company in America made the West Coast very upset. And so I think that had a lot to do with it.
Even to this day, though, you're saying on the West Coast, the records haven't done as well as they've done.
Oh, now Bat Out of Hell 2 has. Bat Out of Hell 2. It doesn't do in Los Angeles what it does in New York, but it's doing very. I mean, in comparison to other records, it's doing it. It's amazingly well. But New York, in that whole north, in America, in Canada, and that northeast Midwest section is, if I ran for president, I would win, I believe. So, but in comparison to. If you get into what this record has done in the UK and Germany, there's Bat Out of Hell 2. It's astounding. I mean, I can't even believe it's almost at 2 million copies in the UK at this point.
Which for that smaller market is quite astounding.
Yeah, and it's over. I mean, in a lot of markets already in Germany, we've already passed Bat Out of Hell with this. So I have no idea what's going to happen, but it could be very interesting. I mean, I might have another record that's in the top 10 sales of all time. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't really. No. It's nice and it makes good press, but as far as that, I just care about my shows. I like my live shows. I really like playing live, and and as far as Japan is concerned, everybody that I've ever talked to about Japan, I'll get into conversation. And the wildest one was I once had a conversation in Australia with Daryl Hall. And I went to see Hall & Oates play in Australia, and I went backstage and we were talking. And they had just come from Japan, and so I said, oh, how was Japan? And he started to tell me, and he stops, and he looks at me, and he goes, you got to go to Japan. And he goes on this whole. It was like almost going to shake me. He goes, that audience is going to love what you do. He said, because they really like the. They call me over the top. I'm not really. I'm just very dramatic in everything I do. And I don't even plan it to be dramatic. It's just that I just put so much into it that it becomes that. It was described in the UK in a review just in December that I sing as if my wife and children are being held captive and their life depends on it. And I thought about that for a minute and I go, yeah, he's right. I do that. Not intentionally, it's just what I do. I don't say that's what I'm going to do, but I really just put everything I got into it.
So you're sort of an intense, urgent type of person, with sort of a theatrical side.
Yeah, I mean, I just that I just let it go. I don't stand outside and look at myself as what bad actors do, and I don't sit and I get the feeling that singers. I don't know, because I really have never discussed this with singers. This is only my opinion. That singers tend to, when they sing, listen to themselves sing. And I don't necessarily know that makes them bad singers, but I know that if you're an actor and you watch yourself act, that you're a bad actor. So you have to, when you act, you cannot be there. You know, it's like when De Niro acts, Robert De Niro is not part of it. Robert De Niro takes another, sort of like what you would imagine like Linda Blair went through in it's being possessed by the spirit or the soul of the person that you're playing. One of the best I've ever seen is, I mean, De Niro's great all the time, and Olivier, but one of the best examples is Hoffman in Rain Man. If you've ever seen the person that he played, you'd swear that this particular person had possessed Dustin Hoffman. I mean, it was like the transition and the technique and what Hoffman did in that, it will just floor you if you see the two people side by side.
Okay, what we have to do, meet is kind of back up.
Yeah, that's fine.
Because
you can back up. I go on forever. I have free association.
Let me say
I'm sort of like a psychologist, and I take care of a lot of angst when I do these interviews. I throw things out and get rid of a lot of things.
We'll have you lay down on the couch
for
a while.
Probably might as well. I do that anyway. Go ahead.
This magazine, Rocking On, is the #1 selling magazine in Japan.
Oh, I know that.
However,
they have no idea who I am.
Exactly. They could tell you the name of all of Sting's kids. They can tell you, who's in the Red Dwarfs and the Yellow Shoes, all these British bands that have just made it big overnight and stuff. But they don't know who Meatloaf is.
Who are the Red Dwarfs?
No,
you made that up. Oh, like the Screaming Chipmunks.
Exactly. The Fireworks or whatever. They can tell you every big hit these bands ever had because they're.
That's fine. We can go backwards.
Yeah. So what I wanted to ask you about was when the first Battle I Held hit it big. You were already on the road. I mean, you were actually doing acting and music, right?
Oh, I've always done that. I was lucky enough. I mean, I started out. I was a football player, and I got hurt and couldn't do that anymore. And I had no idea what I wanted to do. And then my mother became very ill and died, and it really upset me. And so I left Texas, and I didn't want to be anywhere where she was, or where she'd been, or anywhere my life had been. I ran away. I tried to escape. You can't do that, but I know that now. But so I went to California, and I was working as a bouncer in the teenage nightclub. And this is how the name actually kept going. Because when I went to California, everybody before then knew me as Meatloaf. Everybody called me Meat. Since I was about 8 years old. Since about 1959, 58, 59. And so when I went to California, they were calling me Tex. And it drove me crazy. And I said, stop calling me Tex. And they go, well, what did they call you? You know, and my real name was Marvin, but I could not ever, nobody's ever called me that my entire life. Because I hated it. From the time that I was old enough to know that that's what my name was, when I was little, I would say, don't call me that. I remember, that's one of the only things I remember about being little is that people would go, Marvin, come in. I go, in this little voice, don't call me that, you know. And so people call me by my initials, ML. And that's where Meatloaf actually came from. Was from, because they did a lot of things with the initials. Mary Lou, Mighty Large, Meatloaf, whatever. And so they were calling me Tex in California. And I said, stop calling me that. And I said, well, what do people call you in Texas? And I said, ML. Because if they didn't call me Meat, they called me ML, which were my initials. And so out there, it was like, they kept going, Mel? No, not Mel. M period L. And finally, I said, they call me Meat, okay? Meat, okay, great. So everybody started, out there, started calling me Meat. And so I left California and went into Michigan and had a rock and roll band. It was called Meatloaf Soul. And then it changed its name 3 or 4 times. And played all the time in the late 60s.
What kind of music, by the way?
Oh, rock. I mean, we were rock and roll.
Uh-huh.
So I opened in the late 60s to any band that was popular. People have tried to go, well, did you open to the Screaming Chipmunks? I go, no, they weren't popular. But every band that had records in that were popular that you can think of, with the exception of the Jefferson Airplane, the Beatles, and the Rolling Stones. Anybody else Hendrix, The Who.
Probably be passing through town.
Yeah, they were passing through town. Sometimes at big festivals like Detroit Rock and Roll Revival, where Grand Funk actually was the opening act, Joe Cocker opened to me. Were very popular. We had hit records locally, so Joe Cocker would come through town, and he would open to me at the Saginaw Ballroom, wherever it was, And but we did leave. We played in Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, Illinois. We went as far as to Chicago once and opened to Buddy Guy, and I did 62 dates with Ted Nugent. That's where I met Nugent, and I did a lot with the MC5 and Bob Seger, and
these are all Michigan acts.
Yeah, everybody, and James Gang, which was from Ohio, and the McCoys, which were also from Ohio, Rick Derringer and them. So so a lot. That was my base. That's where I started. But I was always dramatic. I mean, I always wanted to blow things up, and because I didn't know any better. But I was always.
Was this original music? Were you writing your own stuff?
Yeah, it was really bad too. It was people go, well, how come they didn't get a record deal? I said, because the material sucked. We did a lot of cover stuff. I mean, we were covering Traffic and Vanilla Fudge, but we'd throw those in to this original stuff. But the one of the songs we had a local hit with was a Lee Michaels song called War. And so then I went back to, that band broke up, and I went back to California, and I was trying to get another band going, and I had a friend who worked at the Aquarius parking lot, parking cars, because the musical Hair was playing there. Now, I didn't know what the musical Hair was at that particular point in time, and the guy he was working with, maybe 2, maybe 3, I don't know how many people were helping park the cars. It was a fairly big place. Anyway, one of them was leaving and wasn't going to do it anymore. And so he said to me, he knew that I was looking for a job, but I wanted to keep my band. So he goes, he said, you can come and, the owner's going to come down at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning and meet me there, and I'll hook you up with a gig. I said, great, let's do it. And so I went down there at 11. The owner was late. There was all these people outside, thousands of people outside this theater. I said, what's going on? He says, oh, it's a musical. It's some kind of hippie musical. I said, here. I said, oh, okay. And I'd never heard of it before. Seriously, and it was a big hit. And, I guess that I knew the song because Aquarius Let the Sun Shine In, but I didn't know what it was from. And so one of the cars pulled in, and this guy's name was Barney, and he starts talking to this guy, and he introduces me, and he says, this is Meat. And the guy goes, Meat? That's a funny name. Barney goes, yeah, it's Meatloaf. Isn't that funny? And I go, well, Meat, just, And so he goes, what do you do? And I say, I sing. And he says, well, why don't you audition for this? And I said, audition for what? He says, well, that's what all these people are here doing. And I said, oh, I don't know. So he goes, come on. So I go in with this guy, and he introduces me, this guy named Armand Coulet, who's still a friend of mine now, who's the director. And he says, this is Meatloaf. And Meatloaf's a singer. And Armand says, well, okay, well, go ahead, put him up. And there's thousands of people with pictures and songs and this. And so he walks up and he goes, well, what are you going to sing for me? And I said, what do you mean, what am I going to sing for you? I came for a job in the parking lot. And he goes, well, I thought you were a singer. I said, well, I do. And he says, well, then sing something. So the piano, I looked at the piano player and I told him I want to do this old blues song. And I said, the name of the song is The World Is All Right, It's the People That Make It Bad. And I said, but it's tricky, because I said there's a double turnaround at the end of every, I said instead of 16, it's actually like an 18-bar kind of thing, because there's a little tricky phrase. And I got through the first stanza of it, and they stopped me. And they said to me, can you be here at 6 o'clock tonight? And I said, yeah, what for? And they go, well, we'd like for you to do our play. There's a guy leaving, and we would like for you to take his place. And I said, well, okay. And then they told me how much money I would make. And I said, okay, fine, I'll be here. I mean, I think it was like $400 a week, which was like 1969, 1970, somewhere. It was amazing. How old am I? I'm not even 20 yet. And so I'm going, yeah, no problem. Count me in. And so, but that's how I got involved in theater. And so the name Meatloaf then, when Actors Equity, because you had to join Actors Equity, which is the actors union in America. They wanted to use Meatloaf as my name, obviously, so I joined Actors Equity. And I eventually wound up not ever doing that production because the guy that I was going to replace decided not to leave, and they sent me to New York. They put me right into on Broadway. I did Detroit for a little while, and then I wound up in doing Broadway. And when I was there, people just kept coming to me and want me to do other plays all the time. And I wound up doing. I wound up working for Joe Papp and wound up doing 2 Shakespeare's in the Park, New York Shakespeare Festival for Joe Papp. And I said to Joe, who, see, sometimes now in movies, they when I first get hired in a movie, they never want to use the name Meatloaf because they think it's funny. And Meatloaf is a double-edged sword. And we'll go to that in a second. But I said to Joe Papp, do you want to use Meatloaf? He goes, this was for Shakespeare. He says, absolutely. And he always called him Bill. He said, Bill Shakespeare would love your name. He said he would put it in the plays if he was alive writing today. So the first one I had a minor role in, and the second one I had a pretty good role in it. And it said, Joe Papp presents William Shakespeare's As You Like It, starring Raul Julia, Mary Beth Hurt, and Meatloaf. And Clive Barnes, who was a New York critic, was the first to ever call me Mr. Loaf, because for the actors they always used Mr. Julia, Miss Hurt, Mr. Loaf, and I got and so that sort of legitimized me in New York and in the theater circle. So nobody ever felt it was funny. And I did Sam Shepard plays, and I did a one act at Actors Studio that was Actors Studio is the famous. Where Brando studied and everything. I did a one-act play, a 20-minute one-act, one-man one-act for them, in which, what's his name directed? Oh, come on. I forgot the guy who ran it.
Don't worry.
It's okay, but he was one of the famous acting teacher of all, Pacino and everybody, and so it was very. But at the same time that was going on, I was down at Max. I was sitting in with rock and roll bands down at Max's Kansas City and all these rock clubs all through Manhattan. So I would be doing, and we were also doing singing. I was doing rock at some rock clubs, but I was also singing Steinman stuff at some dinner. They're not dinner, but they're like not piano bars, and they're sort of like supper clubs, only they have dinner there. It's not rock club, and you go and you just sing with a piano. So I would do that as well as like doing old rock songs with cover bands, sitting at Max's Kansas City and doing Shakespeare. So it was like this. The people that I was doing Shakespeare with thought I was completely out of my mind from day one. And the people at the rock clubs, when they figured out that I was also doing Shakespeare, they thought, what the hell's wrong with you? And then these people, these supper clubs, would find out I'm doing rock and roll because they knew I'd be doing Shakespeare, and they'd find out that I'm also appearing down here at Max's Kansas City with Lizard or somebody, And so it just became this thing, and people would say to me, when we first tried to get Bat Out of Hell signed, people go, you're an actor. You can't do rock and roll. And then after Bat Out of Hell became very successful, people just go to me, well, you're a rock and roll guy. You can't act. I go, well, wait a second. You got to understand that's what they said to me 10 years ago about the rock and roll. You can't do both, but you can. And so I've always said I was never a rock and roller who decided I wanted to act, and I was never an actor who decided I wanted to do rock and roll. It both just sort of happened. What I really wanted to do was play football. And so that was my real goal in life. And I mean, so people say to me, if you could choose, what would you choose, acting or rock and roll? I go, neither one. I'd be playing defensive tackle for the Cowboys if I could choose. So, but I think that it was chosen for me, and I think that I do what I'm supposed to do because I'm very happy doing it.
You said you had been singing stuff that Steinman wrote at these supper clubs. It was original
all the way back till 74, 73.
So you first met Steinman about that?
71.
71.
December. Actually, we're trying to figure out whether it was December of 71 or I think it was December of 71.
Uh-huh. How did you meet up? And what brought you together?
I auditioned for him. He had written the music to a Michael Weller play that was my first play with Pat. And I had been doing an off-Broadway play. The guys who wrote Hair had done another play, and I was doing their play off-Broadway. Wasn't a hit, and I was also doing working at Cafe La Mama and the Manhattan Theater Club. So I was going between those three places all the time. Shakespeare Festival. I was, for the 6 years that I worked in theater in New York, I was at the Kennedy Center in D.C. and in L.A. at the Roxy doing Rocky Horror. I was never out of work for one day. And a lot of times I would have... I was so pompous in New York in the early days that that I refused to audition.
I find this hard to believe. Is that right?
Yeah,
you were you were the up and coming actor at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I would audition once.
Uh-huh.
And I would say, you've seen what I've done. My agent would call me back and say they'd like for you to come back. And I'd say, no. They've seen me. They know what I do. They either want me or they don't. And he would go, are you sure? And I go, yeah. And every time I did it, they'd always want me. And so, I mean, I remember turning down roles that like John Travolta got, because I turned it down and all that. And I was working, I was working with Ron Silver and Raoul and Fred Gwynn and Mary Beth and
So wait, if the music thing hadn't happened, you would have been right up with these acting icons.
Yeah, I mean, I worked with with Billy Murray and John Belushi and Gilda and.
I find it hard to believe that you did Shakespeare, huh? That was you were.
Yeah. I did Rodrigo.
Just give us a couple lines here. It's like, what does it sound like when Meatloaf does Shakespeare?
Just like I'm talking to you now. Only he just does thou not know wherefore thou goest into the night. Shall not thou come before thy awaken? I mean, it's the same. Shakespeare's not some hidden mystery that everybody wants to think it is. And the way I found that out was I was scared to death when I was hired. I'd never read Shakespeare. I cheated, and you read Cliff Notes in high school, and so I had no idea. I didn't have a clue, and I was like, I'm going, what do I do with this? It's weird. And I watched Mickey Rooney when he was young had done a movie in England of A Midsummer Night's Dream, and he played Puck. And one night it was on the Late movie on CBS. And normally if I saw that kind of stuff, I'd just go, oh, come on, give me a break, get out of here, I don't want to see this. But I said, oh, I better watch this. I got to watch this. And it wasn't very long into the movie that the woodsmen were sitting around this campfire. And they were all just sitting there talking, just like we do now. The only difference is that Shakespeare wrote in two kinds of languages. He wrote, that's why the people in the street went out and saw it. I mean, they were just people, there wasn't like a lot of the classical composers composed for kings and for the royalty. Well, Shakespeare was writing for the masses. And he did have the ability of knowing in his writing, educated enough to know the proper language of the day, which the royals or the sophisticated or the philosophers would know. But also, he also wrote very street, as if you were to go now, somebody would write 42nd Street language, like jive time, nickel down, popcorn cootie, that kind of stuff. So he wrote that, he incorporated both languages, and the slangs and the colloquialisms and all that. So it's just a matter of talking. And the language was no different than, than the rap guys would use. And you just have to learn the language. But it was like they just sat around this campfire and were talking. So I went, oh, I got it. And that's really what I learned from this one thing. And my reviews for it were, I got astounding reviews. I was lucky, I guess. But Clive Barnes, the review from Clive Barnes was, he said, Mr. Julia, Miss Hurt, and Mr. Loaf were the only three real people on stage last night. So I've treasured that review my whole life. That was like... And he called me Mr. Loaf, which was my favorite thing.
Well, let's get back to you and Steinman then. You had met up with him when you auditioned for him in '71.
Yeah.
Take us to Bat Out of Hell, though. How did you eventually collaborate for that?
Well, people had always told me that I could sing and I had a great, you can sing, you got a great voice. Thank you very much. But it wasn't until I sang a Jim Steinman song in a Pat production that I got. And that's when I started working for Joe.
What was the name of that particular?
It was called More Than You Deserve, which was... It wasn't called More Than You Deserve when we started. It became More Than You Deserve when we were moving it to Lincoln Center, because that was the song that I sang, and they named the show that.
It became a showpiece.
Yeah. Well, the song actually stopped the show, and as the show grew. First, we did it in a little workshop situation, and the first night we did it, it stopped the show. It was only 100 people, but it stopped the show. And as it grew to the off-Broadway house of 300, it again stopped the show. And when it moved up again, and it became famous. And by the time people knew about it all over town, and by the time that it got to its biggest theater, I've never seen it since then. Inside a written piece of a show, people actually stood up and yelled for more. So, I think it sort of became the thing to do, but at the same time it was legitimate. You know what I'm saying? It was like people would go, you got to see this, it stops the show. So they would come anticipating that it would stop the show, and then it became sort of like this Rocky Horror thing where they throw rice at the screen. It was, one led to the other, but it became so absurd that they actually wrote in, I sang another chorus into the play, and it was dialogue that led it to get there again. So that was very funny. But from that, I knew that there was something special when I got a hold of these Jim Steinman songs, because he had written everything in that play. And there were better songs, as far as I was concerned, inside the play. But that one seemed to the combination seemed to work really well. So by pulling teeth, because he's not exactly Mr. Spunky, he his pacing is very slow, and he's not really aggressive when it comes to wanting his work shown or done or any of that kind of thing. The combination of us two in that regard as well, because I don't mind doing this kind of. He could never keep up. So from that kind of. So I really pushed him and got him to write these songs, because he wrote songs that you think people think they're funny now, with a bridge here and a bridge there and this goes there and then. Forget that. People keep going, there's 3 songs in one. I said, you should see the songs he used to write. There was 15 in one. At least we got him into making records, It was like...
Well, so you had a grand desire at the time then to put out one record.
No, we didn't. Well, I don't think we even knew we were writing a record. We were just trying to perform. And we actually sold out Carnegie Hall in 1975, long before, just on the basis of what people knew us around in New York.
Wait, you sold out Carnegie Hall as a solo act?
Yeah.
You came to see you do Stuyvesant stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. But it was an extension of the theater, though.
Yeah, it was.
You took the songs and you sang.
Well, no, they weren't. None of them were in the. None of the More Than You Deserve would be the only one that was in that theater piece. The rest of them took the words and Bat Out of Hell and those kind of things. But the record companies really refused to acknowledge that Jim Steinman songs people would like. They went, and I'm going, well, if people don't like them, why are they here? And they kept going, well, they're here to see you. And I kept going, all right, I'll give you that. But I'm telling you what, before these Jim Steinman songs, nobody wanted really, they kept telling me I could sing, but I wasn't selling tickets. I said, there's a combination here that works. And they just didn't see it. And, they wanted, every record company wanted to sign me, but they didn't want me to do Jim Steinman songs. And so I said, well, then I really don't want to do this, because I think it's real important.
What did they want you to do, though? Did they have other, in-house composers?
Yeah. They wanted me to do, soul music. They really wanted me to be because my roots are really blues, gospel kind of thing. And Jimmy said, that's real pedestrian, and that's real easy for you to do. And so why go with what's easy? Go against the grain. That's what's going to make it a lot more interesting. And I agreed with him. Because I had Bill Withers on the phone calling me up and saying he wanted to write songs for me, and was saying, look, I think you're great for yourself, but I don't think you're right for me. It's like, I don't think it's going to work. And Jimmy was saying that, and I believed him. And we went against the grain, because I have that root of blues gospel, but at the same time, at the same time that this was going on, I also, which is even wilder, I also had an offer from the sponsors of the opera company in New York, who had come to me and offered to pay me ready for this number, in 1973, $60,000 a year for 5 years. So $300,000 guaranteed. And what I was going to do was study opera for 5 years. And then I would make my premiere at the opera company in New York.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That's extraordinary. They must have...
Because I'm a Helden tenor. And Helden, they're very rare. There was 2 in the opera, and now there's only 1, and he's an Italian. The other one was from Texas, and he died recently. He was Bill somebody, and he was 60-something years old, and the other one is an Italian who's in his 50s.
Helden.
It's a Helden tenor.
What does Helden mean?
Basically, what the definition is, you sing a lot higher than it sounds.
Okay.
That's basically what goes on. Pavarotti is not a Helden tenor. He's I forgot some other kind of tenor, but they saw me sing the first Shakespeare I did. I sing a song, one of the Shakespeare lyrics, and David Shire, who wrote a lot of movie music, wrote the thing, and they heard me do this Shakespearean, lyrics to David Shire, and they all flipped out. This was in the first Shakespeare, and they all went crazy. And they were following me around and calling, and I just kept going, I'm really not interested in opera so much. I checked it out just because it's $60,000 a year. It sounded very interesting. But I found out that the conductor really is in total control of everything. In tempos, keys, you have no say-so. Unless you are a Pavarotti or a Beverly Sills or somebody like that. And even then, it is a struggle for them when the operas are actually put up for them to go against the conductor. The conductor is the big rooster here. He controls the hen house. And I just knew my nature because I had terrible fights with David Shire over how he wanted me to sing his music. And I'm saying to him, I'm not going to sing it that way. I'm not going to phrase it that way. I'll phrase it the way I want to phrase it. I'm going to phrase it the way I think the meaning's going to come across. And that's how I've always been with Jimmy or whoever. I never phrase the way musicians would want you to phrase. You know, they always go, you're a little ahead of the beat. I said, well, that's because the phrasing needs to be that way for the dramatic, for the lyrics to come through the right. And so I have these huge arguments. That's my one argument with the world is I go, I don't care what you do musically, I'm going to do this lyrically. And so I know that I would not have lasted 6 months doing that just because of the nature of how I think. So I turned that down, and Jimmy and I just started working, and we went through. It was hell trying to get that signed because nobody believed in Jim Steinman's stuff.
Right. It wasn't exactly a product of the times, and yet it came.
It's not a product of the times now either.
Right. Not now either. Although it is unique and it's sort of theatrical.
I believe it's the true alternative.
Yeah. When I first heard it, I thought it was like a soundtrack or something. I couldn't believe it was just a regular pop album. So Bat Out of Hell comes out, and it's a huge success. And obviously, you guys had the formula down. At that point, though, did you want to become like a self-contained artist? Did you want to write your own stuff, or did you want to go off in your own direction?
No, I just quit. I didn't want to be famous. Mm-hmm. That's why you didn't hear from me again, really, at that point in time. Because people have always gone, they always write this phrase, and I let them, and I never argue with them, and I just kind of, they go, well, it was a one-hit wonder. And I always believe that if you want to write something, or you want to say something, then you should come from a place of knowledge instead of a place of ignorance. And when they write that, they're coming from a place of ignorance. Because what happened is, in 1979, if I would have gone ahead and done the record that we were going to do, it would have been out probably in 1979 at the latest January of 1980.
This is the follow-up.
Yeah. But I didn't. Bat Out of Hell at one point was the biggest selling record in the world. I mean, it was, in America, it was doing 500,000-600,000 units a week, and it did it for, like a good 8 weeks, which is huge. I mean, it was...
At the time, it was unheard of. Yeah.
Oh, it was gigantic.
Yeah, right.
There was no way that anyone could tell me to this day that if we had to put that record out, that record wouldn't have been... Maybe I don't know how good it would have been. I can't tell you that. But all I know is that that record would have been as big as this one is. And maybe bigger. Or whether the third one would have, you never know about that, But it would have worked. And so I never have gone with that theory because it was a self-imposed exile that I went through because I was doing things to CBS like having them, they would go, the new star on the horizon, and I was going, take the word star out. I don't want to be called a star. That's not what I am. And I finally wound up going to a psychologist for a year and a half to deal with deal with being called a star.
I don't understand this, though, because everything you've done thus far, you've sort of been touted as a star on the horizon anyway, whether you were an actor or...
Yeah, but the difference, there's a difference. When you do theater in New York, you can be sitting and having dinner or being walking down the street, and people come up to you and go, oh, I saw you in that production, I thought you were great. Oh, thank you very much. And they go, and you go. And that's it. It doesn't require any more than that. It's a compliment for your work, every so often somebody wanted to do an interview. When you'd leave the theater, ever so often somebody would ask for an autograph. There was no... You didn't feel like you were responsible for something, And then in '77, there was so many... I became so famous that so many people were going to give me advice, and it was like being eaten by piranha. Because also in that theater world, people don't necessarily come around you wanting this, wanting that. You're kind of shielded in that theater world. You don't have, these, because there's not enough money there's not enough money involved with it. That's when they all come out, when they see the money side of it. When you're doing theater in New York and you're doing off-Broadway pieces, yeah, people see your work and they like you, and you're in the inner circle. You're known, but I mean, nobody's going to come after you because you're making $800 a week. I can tell you that. But when you start talking about millions and millions and millions of dollars, then you play a whole other game. And I didn't like that game. I really didn't like it because I never have done anything for the money. And anybody who knows me and even knows my theater past, turning down Broadway shows to go off and do some off-Broadway piece because I wanted to do the work. I wanted to do the Sam Shepard, Billy the Kid and Jean Harlow instead of the Andrews sisters over here, and that's the exact truth. I went and did some off-Broadway show, which was paying me, off-Broadway, was paying me $65 a week, plus subway tokens, instead of doing something that was going to pay me $1,000 a week on Broadway. And I chose that work because I thought that I would learn more from that, and that was a better experience as an actor than being in an Andrews Sisters vehicle, which John Travolta got. And so I've never done anything for the money or for that kind of thing. And so I wasn't about to do it then. And it was all about money and about what everybody wanted. And really didn't. Everybody started coming around going, listen, I did this for you, and I did this for you. And I'm going, yeah, okay. And it was like they wanted something. And it happened now, a few weeks ago. And I said to everybody, I said, same thing has happened to me that happened in 1978. Everybody's coming around and they're going, I did this and I did that and I want this and I want that. And I said, I'll quit again. I said, I'll leave. I said, everybody better get them away from me. You just tell them to go away. I really said that. I said it to my wife. I said it to the record company. I said it to management. I said, I'll quit. Because I don't need this. I don't want this. I don't need this. This is not what I'm about. Right. And so they did. They got them away from me and said, okay, bam. And that's over. Now I can go and I can do my work. I can do what I want to do.
So you found out how to sort of shield yourself from this.
Yeah, by saying that's it. They know I've done it before. Yeah. I've walked away before. And then what happened, what I wouldn't do this time that I did before, was I was threatened that I must work or they're going to sue me. And I went and did this record called Dead Ringer that I was not there and do not like. And it did 4 or 5 million copies. And if you look at it, it was before anything for Love, it had the biggest single I've ever had, which was Dead Ringer for Love. But I don't consider that successful. I don't consider that a successful record because I hate the thing. I mean, I'm not there. I can't listen to it. I never have been able to listen to it. People go, oh, I like that record. I cringe when I hear the word. I cringe when I see a cover because I go, oof.
It was a big mistake.
Yeah, I don't like that work. And I mean, Jim and I have actually talked because Jimmy didn't get involved in that. He wrote all the songs, but he wasn't there.
Oh, is that right? He wrote the songs.
Yeah, he wrote the songs, but he wasn't there. And in the last year, we have talked 15, 20 times about totally re-recording the whole thing.
Really?
The same songs. But you have to do that, you really better put your armor on. Because unless you sit and talk to me and understand why I would do it, it would be like a turkey shoot for the press, because they would think we're just doing it for money or whatever. And the only reason that I would want to do it is because I have to do the work right. The work is wrong, and I want to correct the work, you know. And to me, it's like if you have that opportunity to correct your work that was wrong, correct it. You know, it's like if you were painting this wall and it dried and you went, oh, it's wrong. Nobody would say to you, well, you're crazy for painting over it. You know, and artists must do, you know, artists who paint pictures in private must do that constantly. Must go paint something and go, oh, I don't like this work, and paint right over it. How many things have been painted over by artists? And so I don't look at it any different than that of painting over it.
Well, I think we have to wind this down here.
Get to the well, you asked me for the past.
Right. Okay, so we're going to get to the present here. You had been performing quite frequently. You were on the road a lot.
Oh.
And during the interim, Bad Out of Hell, the first one, has continued to sell. I believe it's up to, what, 20?
I don't know. It's probably somewhere. Yeah.
Look at
They're admitting at this point to 25. I think it's somewhere close. I think it's like 35 million.
In the last 4 years, it's been like...
In America, it's gone platinum every year.
Platinum every year.
Yeah. Which is like, for most bands, that's like huge success.
Right.
But, you know, nobody... I don't preach it, and I don't go around and search out press and wave my own banner. I just go about doing what I do. You know?
So why was 1993 the year that you had to sort of renew things?
I don't know. Just it was when we finished it. It was just.
It was 4 years in the making.
No. We decided to do it in 1986. Mm-hmm. The record company I was on didn't want it. They said it was too expensive. They didn't trust Jim Steinman, which I understand those reasons. I mean, I understand that, but if I'm with him, it's a different thing. So then in '89 we signed with Virgin and MCA, and we didn't really. I know it's what the press kit says. We took 4 years in the making, but never believe what you read, even in my own bio. We started work on it in December of '90, and we rehearse at the piano until May of '91. That's because that's when all the changes take place. That's when I make all the moves inside the songs, and everybody thinks Jim Steinman writes long songs. He doesn't. He writes long songs, but Meatloaf makes them longer. He writes like 6-minute songs, and I turn them into 12-minute songs. I don't quite know, because I go, well, we need this part here. Now write that, and I want this instrumental here. Let's add that. Okay, now we need to repeat this several times, and it turns out to be 12 minutes, so in '90. He can't, once something is put on tape, he can never change it. So that's why I have to rehearse with him so long, to make all the changes before we ever get it on tape. So the minute it gets on tape and he takes it home, it's locked. You can't, that's it, it's over. No more changes. I can't change a lyric, I can't do anything. But up until that point, I change everything. I make him rewrite verses, and sometimes every once in a while there's my line sitting in there, but I don't... He writes so well that I don't even attempt to write. I mean, I suppose I've written things, but I hate it because he writes so well. I can never equal him. So why try?
Mm-hmm. So why did it take so long? I mean, you said there came a time when you just sort of put stuff in the can, and that was the end of it. Why did it take 2 years for that to?
Because the way we work, we go in the studio for 5 weeks, and then we pull out for 5 weeks, and we listen. Jimmy knows. I guarantee you, every 100th of a second of this record. He can listen to it 16 hours a day. You call him up in the morning and you go, what are you doing? Oh, I'm listening to the tracks. Oh, okay. And you call him up, you've gone to the movies, you've done this, I listen for 4 hours and I'm like blind. I'm going, okay, that's it. And I call him up, I go, I call him up late at night. I go, what are you doing? Oh, I'm listening. What have you been doing today? Oh, I've just been listening. Jimmy, you've been sitting here for 16 hours listening? Yeah. I mean, I've known him this is true, I have known him to be awake and listen for as many as 32 hours at a time. And he will go on and on and on forever listening. And so we pull out of the studio like 4 4 weeks at a time, 5 weeks at a time. Once we were out for 9 weeks on this project. I was losing my mind. I'm going, we got to go back in. Okay, I'm not quite ready to go back in. Well, when are you going to be ready? Well, I'm still listening. Jim, we've been listening for 8 weeks. I know, but I got to listen. So, for him, this record was very fast. I mean, very slow. And for me, it was, no. For him, this record was very fast. For me, it was an eternity.
Right. He could have spent more time doing it.
We'd still be working on it.
One last question. Are you going to disappear again?
Not unless those people make me.
How would they make you? What would cause?
By interfering with with my work.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's really why I'm here. Mm-hmm. I'm not here for anything other than the work. And when people start fooling with the work and taking away from the work, I'll go away. Because that's what it's about to me. When they start, other things interfere with the work, I don't like it. So I don't want to be here. I don't want to do it when they do that.
When you sell this many records, I can't just tell them to buzz off when they
You can, but you got to understand that they don't like it. They get very angry when when you start. You're talking. This is big. You're talking business at this point, and business is fine, and you expect to get paid for what you do, and that's fair and good. But at the same time, that's not the motivation. Money is not the motivation. Motivation is the work, and that's what it will be with me forever. And so, if people want to take that motivation away from me, I don't want to do the work. I'll go do some other work. I'll go hide again for a while. I'll go do off-Broadway shows. Nobody knows I'm there.
$65 a week.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Well, thanks a lot.
You bet. Thank you.
Run out the clock here. Good luck on.
Thank you very much. Yeah. And hope I'm in Japan in the fall.
It's a tour.
Yeah.
Well, when does touring start?
Oh, I've already done 55 shows.
What?
And we've got another 50 in sales of all time. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't really. No. It's nice and it makes good press, but as far as that, I just care about my shows. I like my live shows. I really like playing live. Mm-hmm. And and as far as Japan is concerned, everybody that I've ever talked to about Japan, I'll get into conversation. And the wildest one was I once had a conversation in Australia with Daryl Hall. And I went to see Hall & Oates play in Australia, and went backstage, and we were talking. And they had just come from Japan, and so I said, "Oh, how was Japan?" And he started to tell me, and he stops, and he looks at me, and he goes, "You got to go to Japan." And he goes on this whole. It was like almost going to shake me. He goes, "That audience is going to love what you do." He said, because they really like the. They call me over the top. I'm not really. I'm just very dramatic in everything I do. And I don't even plan it to be dramatic. It's just that I just put so much into it that it becomes that. It was described in the UK in a review just in December that I sing as if my wife and children are being held captive and their life depends on it. And I thought about that for a minute, and I go, yeah, he's right. I do that. Not intentionally, it's just what I do. I don't say that's what I'm going to do, but I really just put everything I got into it.
So you're sort of an intense, urgent type of person, with sort of a theatrical side.
Yeah, I mean, I just that I just let it go. I don't stand outside.
Tell you the name of all the Sting's kids. They can tell you, who's in the Red Dwarfs and the Yellow Shoes, all these British bands that have just made it big overnight and stuff. But they don't know who Meatloaf is.
Who are the Red Dwarfs?
No, just
you made that up. Oh, like the Screaming Chipmunks.
Exactly. The Fireworks or whatever. They can tell you every big hit these bands ever had because they're.
That's fine. We can go backwards.
Yeah. So what I wanted to ask you about was. when the first Bat Out of Hell hit it big, you were already on the road. I mean, you were actually doing acting and music, right?
Oh, I've always done that. I was lucky enough. I mean, I started out. I was a football player, and I got hurt and couldn't do that anymore. And I had no idea what I wanted to do. And then my mother became very ill and died, and it really upset me. And so I left Texas, and I didn't want to be anywhere where she was, or where she'd been, or anywhere my life had been. I ran away. I tried to escape. You can't do that, but I know that now. But so I went to California, and I was working as a bouncer in a teenage nightclub. And this is how the name actually kept going. Because when I went to California, everybody before then knew me as Meatloaf. Everybody called me Meat. Since I was about 8 years old. Since about 1959, 58, 59. And so when I went to California, they were calling me Tex. And it drove me crazy. And I said, stop calling me Tex. And they go, well, what did they call you? And my real name was Marvin, but I could not ever, nobody's ever called me that my entire life. Because I hated it. From the time that I was old enough to know that that's what my name was, when I was little, I would say, don't call me that. I remember that's one of the only...
All right, so we can just do this while you're walking away there?
I'll be quiet.
You don't have to be quiet. As long as you answer the questions. Is this your first time here?
Yes.
Really? Seems kind of strange because, back with the first album, you hit it so big.
Yeah, everywhere but here.
Mm-hmm.
I think it sold like 2.
One of the few places in the world, though, huh? Didn't do that well.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Even in South America, Mexico, it did pretty well. I mean, it wasn't like England or Germany or the America or those places, but the Southeast Asia in general, that sort of
didn't take off like it did elsewhere. Is that something the record kind of a crass question, but is that something the record?
I think so. I would say I'm pretty much right on the button on that one.
They say like it does well in Denmark, it does well in English-speaking countries. Why not Asia? Why not?
I just think they didn't really try. I think really what happened was that at that point in time, they leaned so heavy on California market as opposed to the whole American market. And the California market was very slow in picking up Bat Out of Hell. And even still today, Bat Out of Hell has never had the impact on the west coast of America that it has had around the rest of the world. And I think that the Southeast in this area, I don't look at myself as what bad actors do, and I don't sit and I get the feeling that singers, I don't know, because I really have never discussed this with singers, this is only my opinion, that singers tend to, when they sing, listen to themselves sing. And I don't necessarily know that makes them bad singers, but I know that if you're an actor and you watch yourself act, that you're a bad actor. So you have to when you act, you cannot be there. It's like when De Niro acts. Robert De Niro is not part of it. Robert De Niro takes another, sort of like what you would imagine, like Linda Blair went through in being possessed by the spirit or the soul of the person that you're playing. One of the best I've ever seen is, De Niro's great all the time, and Olivier, but one of the best examples is Hoffman in Rain Man. If you've ever seen the person that he played, you would swear that this particular person had possessed Dustin Hoffman. I mean, it was like the transition and the technique and what Hoffman did in that, it will just floor you if you see the two people side by side.
Okay, what we have to do, Meat, is kind of back up.
Yeah, that's fine.
Because
you can back up. I go on forever. I have free association.
Let me say
I'm
something.
sort of like a psychologist, and I take care of a lot of angst when I do these interviews. I throw things out and get rid of a lot of things.
We'll have you lay down on the couch
yeah,
for a while.
Well, I might as well. I do that anyway. Go ahead.
This magazine, Rocking On, is the #1 selling magazine in Japan.
Oh, I know that.
However,
they have no idea who I am.
Exactly. The
impact was from California more than it was from the West Coast more than anything else. It's like, as for some reason the West Coast never really wanted to. Well, they kept calling me. They didn't play Springsteen either for a very long. Not until Hungry Heart, until '81. Born to Run, they wouldn't play him, and it's just that he put out more records than I did, quicker. And so they kept calling anybody, and Billy went through the same thing, Billy Joel, and they just kept calling us East Coast artists. And they said, well, the West Coast doesn't relate to the East Coast. I mean, it was this whole kind of very strange political kind of thing. And then I think the record company in America made the West Coast very upset. And so I think that had a lot to do with it.
Even to this day, though, you say on the West Coast, the records haven't done as well as they've done.
Oh, now Bad in Hell 2 has. Bad in Hell 2. It doesn't do in Los Angeles what it does in New York, but it's doing very. I mean, in comparison to other records, it's doing it. It's amazingly well. But New York, in that whole north, in America, in Canada, and that northeast Midwest section is, if I ran for president, I would win, I believe. So, but in comparison to, if you get into what this record has done in the UK and Germany, there's Bad in Hell 2. It's astounding. I mean, I can't even believe it's almost at 2 million copies in the UK at this point.
Which for that smaller market is quite astounding.
Yeah, and it's over. I mean, in a lot of markets already in Germany, we've already passed Bad in Hell with this. So I have no idea what's going to happen, but it could be very interesting. I mean, I might have another record that's in the top 10.